Good morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another sutta study session here with Empty Cloud Monastery. So we'll be continuing with our going through the Dhammapada. So we can start by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this morning selected 3 verses. So verses 57, 58, and 59. So verse 57 is one topic, and then verses 58 and 59 are a set pair. And there's no relationship between these two, except that they happen to be right next to each other. However, since both are relatively short and straightforward, I'll be talking about both of them this morning. So I'll start by reading the translation in English, and then I'll talk about it in a bit more detail, referencing the Pali as relevant, and then I'll take any questions you have in a few minutes. So the first one, verse 57, says, "The path of those who have perfect virtue, who live without negligence and are liberated through right knowledge, cannot be found by Mara." So, very short verse. So first off, this is talking about somebody who is clearly at least a stream enterer. So the term sampanna sila, translated here as perfect virtue, sampanna sila, is one of the descriptions of a stream enterer. So somebody who has attained the first stage of awakening naturally has perfect morality, perfect virtue, perfect sila. They will never intentionally hurt another living being. They'll never intentionally steal anything, or tell lies, or cheat on anybody, or use intoxicants. So a stream enterer, because of their wisdom, they naturally have perfect morality. It just doesn't make sense for them to deliberately commit any major moral transgression. So this is one of the interesting points about Buddhism, which is that wisdom and morality naturally come together. So you sometimes hear in various spiritual traditions, you sometimes hear this idea of so-called crazy wisdom, that when somebody develops a very high degree of wisdom, that they might act kind of crazy. They might act in ways which are strange or bizarre or distasteful, or do things which for ordinary people might seem wrong or even evil. And the idea is that, well, their wisdom is so high that they're seeing the world in a completely different way than the rest of us, and that's why they do things which seem wrong to us. But this is not the understanding in Buddhism. In Buddhism, the understanding is that as one's wisdom increases, then one more and more clearly sees the natural rightness of moral conduct. The more deeply one understands the world, the more strongly one's compassion arises. Until eventually, when one's wisdom gets past a certain point, namely the point of stream entry, one becomes incapable of deliberately harming anyone. One might still do minor misconduct of various sorts, but one won't do anything major. One won't do anything substantially harmful to either to others or to oneself. Similarly, one sometimes encounters this idea in various spiritual practices, so not necessarily Buddhist traditions, but non-Buddhist traditions usually. This idea that a awakened being is exempt from morality. that morality no longer applies to them. They can do whatever they want. And in Buddhism, we would actually say, yeah, that's technically true. But the reason why they're exempt from morality is because it's so natural to them that they don't need to think about it anymore. Their natural conduct is to behave with perfect morality. Like a sunflower naturally turns towards the sun. It doesn't have to think about it. It's not like the sunflower is thinking like, okay, which way is the sun? Is it to the left or to the right? Which way should I turn? It's just the sunflower naturally orients itself towards the sun. So in the same way, an awakened being naturally always orients themselves towards perfect morality. It's effortless. They don't need to think about it at all. So in that sense, they're exempt from morality in that they don't have to put any effort into being virtuous. It comes to them easily. But for those of us who are not awakened, then we do have to make an effort because we still have foolishness, which leads us to make foolish choices. We still have bad habits, which leads us to make bad choices. So we need to take on training precepts and training practices which help us to change our bad habits and stop us from doing anything too harmful while we're trying to develop sufficient wisdom and compassion to break those habits completely. So the path of those who have perfect virtue, who live without negligence. So the Pali here is appamada vihari. So I spoke about appamada a few days ago when we had some verses on this. So appamada literally means without negligence. So one is not negligent. And there's two aspects to this. One is not being negligent in terms of the consequences of one's choices. So this is related to the idea of perfect morality. When we understand the consequences of our choices, then we will try to avoid doing anything which might hurt anyone. So that's one element of living without negligence. The other element is maintaining mindfulness at all times, mindfulness and clear awareness at all times. So we're not negligent of our body and our mind. We're always paying attention to what we're doing with our body and mind at all times. So that's what it means to live without negligence. And the third trait that's listed here is liberated through right knowledge. So in Pali, that's samadanya vimutta. So samma means correct or right. Anya means knowledge. And vimutta is liberation. So liberated through right knowledge, this is a term that's normally applied only to arhats, only to fully awakened beings. So right knowledge is the direct understanding of the Four Noble Truths. This wisdom which clearly knows how we generate dukkha and how we can stop generating dukkha. And it's the wisdom which leads to liberation. So vimutta. Vimutta is the complete release from all unwholesome tendencies of mind, the complete release from all delusion and defilement. So complete liberation from the cycle of rebirth, complete liberation from the suffering of samsara. And what the Buddha is saying here is that such a person, their path cannot be found by Mara. So in Pali, this is Maro Magang Navindati. So their path cannot be found by Mara. So Mara in Buddhism, it's both the name of a particular grumpy deva who likes to hassle Buddhist practitioners. It's also the name of a whole category of grumpy devas who like to tempt and trick and harass actually anyone who's trying to break out of samsara, but particularly Buddhist practitioners. Mara also represents our own internal temptations, our own internal defilements. So that little inner voice we get, which is like, just do it. It doesn't matter. Just once, it'll be fine. Like that, the little inner voice, which is like, oh, it's okay. You You can watch another episode. It'll be fine. Doesn't matter how late you stay up. There's no problem. Just one glass of wine won't hurt. Okay, maybe two, maybe five. So it's that inner temptation. So our inner Mara. So there's an example of this is there's an interesting sutta where an arhat passes away, and then Mara is trying to find them, and Mara can't find the arhat. And the Buddha points this out to the other monks, and he points out how when someone's mind is completely liberated, they cannot be found by Mara. So there's a metaphorical meaning here. So can't be found by Mara means that we're no longer subject to temptation. We're no longer subject to deceit. We can't be deceived by the temptations of the world. But also a literal meaning in that the Mara Devas, so these not so friendly celestial beings that try to manipulate and obstruct us, have no power over an awakened being. They have a lot of power over the rest of us because they manipulate us through our defilements. But because an awakened being has no more defilements, then the Mara Devas have no way to manipulate them, no way to pull their strings. So as the metaphor is in one of the poems in the Therigatha, is the image is given of a puppet with all its strings cut. So the strings on a puppet are what let you make it dance around, like a marionette. That's the strings that you can manipulate to make it dance around. So that's what we are like. We're like a puppet with the strings and the marionette, and it's Mara who's playing the strings, pulling our strings and making us dance around and do stupid things. But an awakened being has cut all the strings, so they're no longer under Mara's control. There's no way for Mara to influence them or affect them. So that's verse 57. So just a sweet little verse about an awakened being. Verses 58 and 59. This one's slightly more painful if you're an unawakened being and if you identify as with that state. This one says, just as in a trash heap discarded by the side of the road, a lotus might bloom, of pure fragrance and delightful to the mind. In the same way, amidst the trash heap of beings, the blind commoners, a disciple of the completely awakened one outshines them with wisdom. So another short verse here. So here the Buddha is bringing in the metaphor of a lotus flower blooming in a pile of trash. And he's using this as a metaphor for someone amidst all the ordinary, unawakened people of the world, what he calls the blind commoners, Patujanas. Patujana means commoner, the ordinary people. So amidst all the blind commoners, the people who are like trash, as he says here, one who attains awakening can appear just like this lotus flower appearing in the midst of a heap of trash, and outshines them with wisdom. So this also gives the image in the mind of this radiant light amidst all the blind commoners. So I don't know much to say about this verse. It's mostly just a cute metaphor that the Buddha brings in, this cute imagery. And what can make this verse a little bit painful for some people is that the Buddha is basically saying, if you're not awakened, then you're trash. But hey, he's the Buddha. How are you going to argue with the Buddha? But what he's pointing to here as well is that we all have the capacity to transform ourselves, to change our state. So yeah, we're currently in the status of trash. We're currently the blind commoners, like a pile of trash at the side of the road. But if we follow the Buddha's teachings and we practice well, then we can transform ourselves into a lotus flower, as being presented in this image. So a radiant lotus flower which illuminates the whole world, and which also can help others to change their state as well. So it's very important not to identify as your current condition. So yeah, right now you've got some defilements and some delusions, but that's not who you really are. That's just your current temporary condition. And we're trying to change that condition. So it isn't who we are. So when the Buddha refers to the trash heap of blind commoners, that's not your true nature. Your true nature is not the trash heap of blind commoners. That's your current condition. That's where you are right now. But that's not how you're going to be forever. If you put forth the proper effort, then you can become like the radiant lotus flower. So again, I don't have much to say about these two verses, 58 and 59, except to bring forward this really beautiful imagery, which to me it's very evocative, this image of the radiant lotus flower blooming in a trash heap. So that's it for these verses. Just a few short verses to get the day started. At this time, I'll take any questions or comments you might have. First off, hello to all the people joining in. Hello to Sam, Geeta, Melissa, Jayanta, Kumu, Jen, Amaranta, Michael, Sarah, Ja, Rick. Thank you all for joining in. And if you have any questions or comments, you can go ahead and type them in. So any questions from the residents? No? Yeah. And I'm not seeing any questions online either. So if there continue to be no questions, then we can go ahead and end for the morning. So remembering that this evening we'll have our weekly monk chat where you can bring all of your questions. So anything even remotely related to Buddhism must be related to Buddhism. If you ask about sports or something, I'm not going to have anything useful to say except don't pay attention to sports. But if you have something related to Buddhism, then I'll do my best to talk about it. So we'll go ahead and end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you next time.